Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. It's the final episode before I'm going to take a break from making these for a couple of months, but we've still got another 4 games to look at before we get to that point, so settle in and enjoy the video. Chase HQ 2 Special Criminal Investigations took pride of place on the front cover this time, because it was the very first cartridge game that Zzapped reviewed since the C64GS was launched. I've never actually played it and I'm not sure exactly why. I think the poor conversion of the first Chase HQ on the C64 put me off the sequel. Was it actually any good? I may have to look it up later. Tunnel Vision continues the string of Racket Hewson releases that have been included on the tapes recently, and it's another one that received a rather poor review in the magazine. It took me a while to fully grasp how to play the game, and even then I wasn't especially good at it. I did eventually manage to win 1 round against a computer out of 5. Basically, you and an opponent explore tunnels and hunt down orbs. You can then capture the orb by shooting at it, and from there you need to carry the orb back to the start line in order to score a point. If the other player picks it up, you can force them to drop it by shooting them a few times. You are also able to turn around 180 degrees and travel in the opposite direction, which can be useful for giving your opponent the slip or for making a quick getaway. The graphics are decent enough with a fairly convincing tunnel effect and competent frame rate. There's some nice speech in the game, and after you get used to things it controls fairly well as well. The game wasn't given the full-length review treatment in the magazine and was instead included in a roundup of recent budget releases. Their brief summary concluded with them awarding an extremely average rating of 48% and saying, "Superb graphics but a definite feeling of pointlessness." A few of the other users on Lemon64 said the game could be quite enjoyable if played with another human being though, and that the score was a bit on the harsh side. I could see how it might be fun for a while against another player. Take it for a spin yourself if you feel so inclined and see what you think. Our next game, entitled Rollin, is in fact a clone of an arcade game called Amidar, but it's not one that I have any personal experience with though. By all accounts this is a very good version of the game. Despite not having seen the arcade original before, it was fairly obvious what I was supposed to be doing from the very first moment I saw it. You control a paint roller and you need to fill in every square on the screen by painting over the outside of it. There are rather goofy looking enemies roaming up and down the screen that will try and prevent you from doing this. I found the joystick controls rather fiddly at first because it can be difficult to manoeuvre exactly where you intend to go, which did result in the loss of a few lives, but I eventually got more used to the game and managed to get a few levels into it. After the fairly straightforward opening stage, there is a bonus game where you need to try and get the little chap at the top to go down to the correct branch so that he meets up with the chap at the bottom. The second real stage after that is where I had the most trouble with the controls, because you now need to drag the paint around from the starting point without moving onto another tile, which can be tricky. You are given 3 jumps which you can use with the fire button to force the enemies to miss you, which can be vital for getting out of trouble. These are replenished at the start of each stage. Overall, Rollin definitely looks pretty basic compared to later C64 releases, but as far as earlier games go, it's decent enough and adequate as an arcade-style game. I quite enjoyed playing it. Zzapped never actually reviewed it though. The third game this month is something that I've actually looked at before, as it was also included on Commodore Format Power Pack 13. It is Hacker 2, The Doomsday Papers, and it is a very clever game, especially given the constraints of the hardware, though it is perhaps a bit too complex to be stuck on a cover tape, as the manual the game came with originally was extremely dense and packed with important information that's key to fully understanding what you're supposed to be doing. Jazz Rignall was a big fan of Hacker 2, saying, "The game itself is superb and the video system is totally convincing." Paul Sumner was also impressed by the presentation, stating, "Certainly, from a technical point of view, the game is a masterpiece." However, he felt the game lacked the atmosphere of the first game, something which I've never played myself. In the end, they took everybody's opinion into consideration when they came up with the overall score of 88%, summing up with, "A very clever sequel, but as with all sequels, the magic has faded." Not having experienced its predecessor myself, I have nothing to compare it to, and as a result I was quite impressed with the game and found it a fascinating thing, albeit a bit hard to fully grasp and get into. There's hours of gameplay in there though if you're willing to put the effort in. It's now been a few years since I last checked it out, and in that time I've largely forgotten how to play it, hence this footage is mainly just me faffing about with the monitors, I'm afraid. Finally for this episode we have Connect 4, which as you may have guessed is a computerised version of the popular physical game of the same name. The real deal can be fairly enjoyable when played with your granddad on a sleepy Sunday afternoon, but it's not a particularly exciting inclusion on a Covertape, is it? The presentation of this version that was released by Atlantis Software is not the greatest either, with an abundance of brown. At least there is some music to listen to, which is better than silence, although only just, as the tune is a bit repetitive and gets a bit grating after a while. So on the whole, this particular tape has been a little bit on the dull side, I would say. Hacker 2 is definitely the pick of the bunch as far as I'm concerned, though if you also fancy a bit of arcade action, then Rollin is worth a look too. Tunnel Vision isn't as terrible as Zzapped made it out to be, I think. You could certainly have done much worse for your $1.99 at the time. Give it a try with a friend. I'm now going to take a break from Covertape Chaos for about 8 weeks or so. There will be some other content on the channel in the meantime, which I shall probably announce quite soon, and the series will be back for another run of episodes in October. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to be kept up to date with future videos. I hope you'll join me again in a couple of months. In the meantime, take care. Thank you.